Welcome back to my Volvo XC90 series. This is going to be part 10, and so just a quick refresher, I bought this car for $700 and I've been working on it and fixing things up and improving it. So in this video I'll be working on the rear hubs and brakes. So you can do both at the same time, but I did end up doing the hub and then the brakes later on, so it's up to you. Let's get to it. Alright, so to replace the hub, we're going to start by removing the wheel, and the disc, the caliper and the disc. So let's get started with that. If your lugs are stuck like mine were, spray them with PV Blaster and take a little break before coming back. Oh, so if your hub's bad, it's possible you'll hear it just by turning the wheel. But actually what we're hearing here is the discs, because these are pretty, a lot of surface rust, because it sat for a while. But you can actually feel if you have a hub issue, if you reach around to the spring. So if you reach in, you can hold the spring and then turn the wheel. If you feel any vibrations in the spring, that means the hub needs to be replaced. Where you see the spring there, you can touch it from the front while you turn the wheel. And so holding onto the spring and feeling for any vibrations while you're turning the wheel in either direction, you can tell if the hub's bad. This is why I don't particularly like bringing my car into shops, because they'll just take their super powerful air gun and just ram, and then it gets stuck. I've had a truck where it was a Ram 1500, and when it got home and went to do the brakes, two of the lug nuts had been cross-threaded and torqued down. One of them had sheared off completely, and then the other one had to be drilled out because it was impossible to remove with anything. It's just bad. I hope this isn't a sign of what's to come for disc removal. Spray some PV Blaster where the wheel meets the disc. That'll make it easier to knock it off. There we go. I've got these to hold the caliper. This is the slide pin. Caliper bolts are here, and then the one is directly below it. Let's see if I can. So there, and then yeah, you can see it below. So just while we're here, you point out that the one thing you're going to want to get out of the way a little bit is the wheel speed sensor, which this is hooked onto the brake line here. So pop that up, and then we're gonna disconnect it here, which is gonna be sliding it up. But you know, right now, yep, there we go. You can pop that up, and then this will kind of stay out of the way. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. All right. So this is why when you reassemble things, if you use the right torque, you can remove things without crazy tools. Oh no! 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 I backed it out too far, now my tool is stuck. Uh-oh. The top one should be easier because there's more access. Just that the ratchet I used isn't the thinnest, and it got stuck against the spring. So obviously, once that happens, you can't really remove the tool. So be aware of that. Okay, one. Is this red Loctite? Why? Why do people do this? Why do people do this? Okay. That seems good for now. PB blaster for this. Okay, good. Had these be completely jammed. Actually, we had to drill one out on my S-Class. And actually, next time, get in there for the brakes, I'll have to replace it. I was able to just tap on it with this mallet a couple times, and it was actually not super seized on, fortunately. So normally if you're replacing your disc, you clean the surface, but since we're replacing the hub, we don't have to. Okay, so to continue, we're gonna remove the nut, or the bolt that holds on the axle. And in my case, it's a 13. There we go. So we're gonna also remove the little bracket that holds the wheel speed sensor, which is 13 millimeters. So right here, you can see it, a little bracket, and the bolt. It's gonna come out. There we go. This goes towards the inside of the car. If you need a little reference point, keep your bolt in. And I think there's a little, this is probably a key so that it doesn't rotate out of place. I'll put that aside, and now, let's see. Probably a bit of PB blaster in there again. And let's see, so that's all done. That means we're gonna work on the 4 bolts. So on the front, the top side here, see the 2? And there's one down here, and another one on the other side. Right there. But you have to get to them from the back. So that's here, here, and down there as well. On this side. And over here, back there. Yep. In my case, they're 15 millimeter bolts. So the reason I'm bringing in the floor jack is because Volvo has a tool that they use to raise the hub up higher, and that way you have access to the bolts on the back. Some people will remove parts of the suspension to access it more easily, but hopefully I should be able to make do with the floor jack, raise it up, get access to the bolts I need, remove the hub, and then keep going. That way you don't have to remove extra parts. I got it, okay. A little bit of rust, not bad, okay. And here I'm using a ratcheting wrench because there's not quite enough space for a regular ratchet. It makes it a little easier. Two. Okay. Now, can I get in here with my breaker bar? Okay. Ooh. That's 3 out of 4. That's really good. I think the last one is the one where we're gonna need to raise up the suspension until it's like centered. That should clear access, and I'll show that once I get this one out. So, fortunately for the top, these 3, I was able to fit my small breaker bar in and break them loose, and then just use a ratcheting wrench to remove the bolts. Number 3. And just like that. So I think I'm going to jack it up from the base of the spring mount. Okay, I can only go up a little bit because I don't want it to come up off the quick jacks. So, got my 15 millimeter here, right here. I can slot this in. I don't know if you can see it on the bolt there. And that's on. And then here, I could probably get a breaker bar. Yeah. Okay. I have 15, extension, and a wobble socket. Gotta reposition the socket. That way I can reposition this. Yep. So you can access it here with the ratcheting wrench to the side. So some people say, you know, if you remove this, you get better access on the side, and I get it. But if you jack it up, this becomes this out of the way enough, I think. Should be okay. What am I running into now? Oh, you're kidding me, I was tightening it. I'm an idiot, okay. What a fool I've been. Here I switch back to the ratchet. Oh, you can actually pull it out. Perfect. Now, with that done, we are. The next step is going to be to remove the actual hub. So, let me get the new one. We are looking at the front. The splines in here connect to the axle, and this is the back. So, this surface on this one is what's going to be holding it on right now. If there's any sort of like corrosion, it's going to cause a little bit of trouble. So we want to. While you're hitting the hub, be careful not to hit the parking brake hardware. Now, since hammering didn't work, I'm breaking out the air hammer. So the only times I use an air hammer is if it's a part I'm not going to reuse, because there's always a chance of it actually denting the part and damaging it. There we go. Brute force. Okay, so here we go. It's off. Now, one way to avoid this happening is to put anti-seize on the mating surface, and that should help a little bit. I'm gonna clean up some of these threads. Okay, now I gotta do the surface in here. The part we're brushing is anything that's going to be in contact with this. We don't want any crud, you know. Anti-seize lubricant. Looks pretty good. I'm gonna put a little bit on here too, just on the mating surface. Let's see. So maybe in that groove too here a little bit. Yeah, I gotta clean that out of it. So it only fits in one direction. You're gonna put this part goes on this side, and you'll be able to match it up. It's pretty clear. Oh, I have to tap it on, I guess, a little bit. Here I'm getting the hub bolts started by hand. With the wobble socket and that, you should be able to then work your way around, tightening it little by little in each corner. I'm going to pull it in as we tighten. So the first step is to torque each one to 20 Newton meters. .45 Newton meters. Okay, and then, so the third step is to angle tighten to 60 degrees, or at least try to, because what I think is the issue I'm having is that it's supposed to be with a fresh bolt and it stretches and seats into place. Since I'm not replacing it, I'm not going to be able to reach the 60 degrees. So this wrench reads out, I'm at 32 degrees and that brought it to 107 Newton meters. Alright, I'll see if I can get it any further on this bolt. Now I'm going to reinstall the bolt that screws into the end of the axle. 13. Here I tightened it up with an impact because otherwise it would just spin the hub. Now something that's good practice and that I do on all my cars is to apply anti-seize to the hub before putting the disc on, and this prevents the disc from seizing onto the hub and makes it easier to take it off down the road. Line this up. Reinstall the locating screw. 10mm here. This one is an M6 size tightening torque, 10 Newton meters. Very light. It's really just until I hold it on. We are now on the brake caliper reinstall step. Clean the old thread locker out of this. Oh wait. Don't fall off. I'm gonna put a little bit of blue Loctite on. I'm gonna torque it right, but I also don't want it to back out. So I don't understand, why is blue Loctite in a red tube? Like, just a little dab, and I'll put a little dab on the other one. Now, go. Blue is temporary, red is permanent. If you put red on stuff, it's not supposed to come off. Which also means that you or the next person who will work on it is gonna have a bad time. I forgot to put this back in. So to torque the caliper, it's 35 Newton meters and then angle tighten 60 degrees with new bolts. And before you wrap up, you're gonna mount the wheel speed sensor cable into that little bracket and onto the brake hose. And then, now that's secure, put the wheel back on. Now one thing I can recommend is getting one of those threaded little rods that screws in. That's like a guide for these. Otherwise you just have to kind of get it on the hub and then turn it into place. So get one of these, and I gotta can't see. No. So once this is finger tight, we'll hold the wheel. It will pull the wheel. It will center the wheel if you go in a star pattern. If it feels tight, don't force it. You don't want to cross-thread stuff and have to drill it out later. Just lightly. And once it's on the ground, you torque it to spec. That's the hub job. Definitely recommend having a setup that will allow you to push the suspension up so you can exit that bottom bolt without removing anything. It makes it a lot easier. Short breaker bar. Power tools don't really fit back there very well. So after taking the car for a drive with the other hub done, there's still hub grinding noises, so it's a good time to do this one too. So let's get started. Same as last time. 19. So again, we have to take these off. One here and one below, and then there's the 13 for this bracket, this hose bracket too. So you can unclip it, the sensor from here if you need to, and then you want to pop it out of here. Once it's out, just have this out of the way, just so it doesn't get damaged. Now normally I would use an impact, but because the spring is right in the way of the caliper bolts, I can't do that, so I'm using a breaker bar. Okay. Okay, get your hook. It's my caliper. I have my caliper hook going up in here, and there's a little gap. You can't really see it, but there's a little gap between this part and the rest, so it stops it from sliding off. You're doing these. Suspension mount, and we can raise it a little bit, which gives us better access on this side down here to get the fourth bolt loose. Truly a struggle. Okay. Air hammer safety, wear your ear protection. Also watch your feet, because if the pub drops on it, it'll not feel good. There we go. Alright, we're back. I realized that earlier when I was removing the bolts in the back, I was using my big 15, and I was like, oh well, it's kind of hard to fit, but it turns out on the other side I was using a much thinner one, and that fit a lot better, and that's why I have to jack this up again a little higher. So to get good access, especially on the bottom rear one, a small socket will do better. Alright, so before reassembling, I'm gonna just brush off these bolts and then brush off in here. So and the mating surface is all the way in, so I'm gonna brush the flat surface and then inside the groove. And then once that's done, we'll put anti-seize on here. Now we are going to get our hub out. This is an SKF, same as on the other side. Part is BR930505. You match it up. This side with the pump comes here. You can see anti-seize on all the surfaces. And you can see, we can notice here the curve, and that's going to be the curve here. Just a little extra peace of mind. And the reason we will be starting with 20 Newton meters is just so it seats properly, and then we'll go up to 40, and then we'll go to 60-degree angle. So there you can see the swing arm, the suspension arm, and the bolt, and the socket. So the small socket fits there, especially when it's raised up a little. And you can use that to tighten it up and loosen it. So for the final tightening, instead of using a wobble socket, I'm going to use a regular extension. And same thing for the back if I can. And that's because you lose a little bit of torque to wobble in it. So I'm going to try to do 60 degrees. On the other side, I wasn't able to get to that. I got to around just over 100 Newton meters. So I'm going to aim for the same thing this time. Volvo does say for any bolt that you tighten to an angle, you should replace them every time. So in this case, I've got them all over 110 Newton meters, which is pretty good, I would say. Hearing. Alright, and that's the hub done. Before I do anything else, I'm going to put some anti-seize on here because I will be replacing the disc. But either way, it's a good idea just so it doesn't stick once you put it on. Fortunately, the new discs are coated, so it should not be an issue. But I think I'll just do it now. So, I have a set of pads. These are Power Stop Evolution Plus ceramic disc brake pads and hardware. And I have the Centric GCX FC fully coated discs. We are going to start with the pads. For our pads, we need to check the hardware. So there's only a clip set up on the front side. So let's figure out how to remove these. Removing this, you probably want to do it while it's still mounted. I'm just going to do it now because I was doing the hub first. Yeah. So as you can see, it's pretty low. So it was time. Now, pull that forward. Right. Yeah. No, there's like a groove in there. Jeez. Bring this back in. And the reason I'm doing this is to support, so I can use this to push the piston in.
So this tool can be used to push the piston back in. That way you have enough room to put the disc in with the fresh pads. I ended up actually using a different tool, which you'll see later, that works better for this car.
And that would allow us to get enough space. Wait a second. This doesn't look right at all. These aren't the right pads. Oh. So here's what happened. I ordered the Z17 980 brake pads, but in the box got the 17 1293, which are the right type of pad, like their brand, but not the right model, where it doesn't fit. So I'm gonna have to deal with where I ordered this from. Maybe return them hopefully, or something, and then in the meantime get some normal pads from the parts store. Well, that's okay. It's a bummer, but we make do. At least the discs are the right ones. And we're back. The proper brake pads now. It's been a couple days. The other ones were returned, and these are actually the right shape and size. So that is good. Now, since in the meantime I've worked on interior stuff that required me to press the brakes, I'm going to push the piston back in again with this tool. Okay, I have ceramic brake parts lubricant. Just brake parts lubricant. And it's got a little brush. So this is going to go on the back of the pads. This will prevent squeaking. Just make sure you don't get it on the surface of the pad. You put it a little bit inside the gear parts. Anywhere it's going to be in contact with the caliper. I'm going to put the old pad in.
So the tool I'm using here is the 11-piece disc brake pad and caliper service toolkit I got at Harbor Freight. It works really well. It uses a plate to push against the outside of the caliper, and usually I use the old brake pad to push against the piston side. And with that done, we'll have enough space between the pads to fit the new disc in.
And now, when we put the new pads in, the disc will actually fit in. Boop, boop, boop. Boom. Okay. A lot easier to line it up now. There we go, that's in. Now our new one goes on the other side. Same thing. Gears. The back. This also comes in like a little red squeeze bottle too, a different type, but it's called Brake Quiet. There we go, that's in. Alright, so our next step is our discs. So this is a coated disc, so just put it on as is. Now, as you may remember, or as I did earlier, a little bit of anti-seize on there. Little 10mm guy.
Now I'm reinstalling the caliper with new bolts.
Newton-meters. As for the back bolts, it's 35 Newton-meters followed by 60 degrees angle tighten. And then once that's done, we can reinstall this bracket, which will hold the speed sensor. And this is also 13. So for this one, we're going to put this hook into the hole. And then same thing on the other side. We can tap it in. I'm going to use so this wire spring thing will prevent this from moving out too far. And once the brakes are applied, it should tighten things up a bit. So I might go do that real quick. That's secure. Not moving anymore. Okay, that's this wheel done. Now we're gonna do the brake on the other side.
So when I put the wheel back on, I usually get everything started by hand to make sure nothing's cross-threaded and everything's seated properly. And then I'll snug it up very lightly with an impact gun. And when the car's back on the ground, I'll tighten it to the final spec, which is 140 Newton meters or 103 foot-pounds. And now I'll do the disc and pads on the other side.
Pop that off. This in here, that there. Push this out. No, we're gonna leave that in. While it's in, we're gonna pop this in. Is that done? You can take this out pretty easily. Some people like to apply this to the caliper itself rather than the pad, but go, put in, put that in. 5. Degrees. That's about 84 Newton meters, if you're curious. I realized I forgot to put this back on. So that's it. I hope this video helped you out. If you have any questions, leave a comment. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And if you want to keep up with the series, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.